Well, hey everybody, we're back here live with VMware Lab Build Up, and today we're going to be looking at what is it? Storage and virtual machines. So before we can build any virtual machines, we have to have somewhere to put them. And you may be wondering, if you followed the last couple of videos, why we installed the VMware software on a USB stick, and that was so that we have the full access to the put a data store on the SSD that we installed in there. So I'm going to log into my ESXi box here and click on storage and go to the new data store and basically just follow the defaults here. So they call it a VMS data store. Click next on that. Give it a name. I like to give them very simple names. If you had like a spinning disk versus an SSD, you may have a performance group or a capacity group, but in this case, it's all just SSD. So I'll just call it data store 01. And again, it's going to let us choose how much of the disk we want to use. I want to use it all. VMS 6, the newest, always makes the most sense unless you have some sort of compatibility reason to go backwards. Next on that, and that just kind of shows you what you're doing. So yes, I'm sure I want to use the entire disk. For this purpose, it will erase it very quickly, and now I have 223 gigabytes available for storage. And the first thing I need to put on there are my install files, my ISOs, so that I can install some virtual machines. So if we click on this data store and go to browse, you'll see there's a little stub file there, but not really much. So I like to create a directory called media or installs, whatever you want to call it, just to hold my install files. And then I want to upload a file to this. So click on upload, and we'll forget about that directory. We need to go to my desktop. All right, and the lab, I got them staged in here. And this would be a whole lot easier to see if it was details. Okay, perfect. So if we go by size, we'll see them. They're big. I've got a Windows 10. This is a Windows 2019 server, I believe, and an Ubuntu server. So let's grab 2019 first. And let's see if that's going to start uploading. Yep, I see it. If we close this, you can now see down here in the log file, it's starting that upload. So let's get a few more going here while that's going. I do not want to put it there. Okay, select the media folder, click upload, and then pick Ubuntu. And then I could probably multi-select these if no, I guess not. One at a time it is, and then Windows 10. I don't know if we'll actually use all these right now, but those will start uploading. So that's going to take a few minutes. Let's see. While it's going, we can actually start our build process on the VM. We don't need the actual ISO until later on in the process. So if we click on virtual machine and click right there, create or register VM, you can pick a new VM and hit next. If we go back really quick, this deploy from OVF or OVA, these are kind of pre-built VM files that you'll find a lot of times online, and those are handy if somebody has built a VM already and they're kind of handing it out to you. So a lot of various kind of public projects, like open source projects, will have VMs already made. They're on Linux, so the OS does not have any licensing restrictions, and it's all pre-configured and pre-made for you. So that's something to just be aware of. Or if you are moving a VM from one host to another without vSphere, you may be just copying the files and then you'd register that VM here. So let's create a new one for our purposes. And again, nothing fancy here. We'll just call this VM01. And let's see, we have to pick the OS. So we'll probably do the Windows one first and probably Server 2019, which is available here. Perfect, 64-bit. And there we're picking where we're going to put it on Datastore 01. All right. I'm good with 2 CPUs on this one. it's okay to over provision CPUs. The only problem you have, if you have a lot of VMs asking for CPU resources at the same time, they will start to be queued up, and there will be a limitation on that. So giving a particular VM, especially if it's more active, less CPU cores is going to prevent it from locking up other VMs that have cores assigned to them. So that's the main reason to give less. So it's best practice. You want to give the minimum that you need. You don't really want to over provision if you don't have to, but I don't like to provision less than 2 in most cases. I've only got 8 gigs total on this machine. So 4 gigs for this one VM is going to be very hard. You can share RAM. There's ways to do that. I never like to do that. I like to dedicate actual physical RAM to a machine and not do any dynamic RAM allocation. So I'm going to give this one 1024, which is not going to be a lot, but it will be enough. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to give this 100 gigabytes. But I'm going to do it thin so that it'll grow as needed in this situation. There's a little performance hit there. It's not recommended. It's best practice in production anymore now that SSD is prevalent, but for the lab, it helps out tremendously. All right, and then everything else. Oh yeah, the network card. I'm going to make a VMX Net 3. Everything else I'm going to leave the same. So once we know that we have an ISO ready, I'll go ahead and link it here, but I'm not going to do that right now. So hit next, confirm all the settings, and finish. And we did get one of the ISOs uploaded. I'm not sure which one. Let's go browse and see. Go back to the Datastore, browse, media. You'll see now we have a new folder called VM01. This is the VM we just created. The VMDK is the hard drive. This is that virtual hard drive that we set up. That's currently at 0 bytes because we did it with thin provisioned. It will not grow until we actually add data to it, and it will only grow as big as it needs to hold the data that we're installing. I'm not sure what VMSD is exactly, but VMX is the configuration. This is the file. It's actually a text file that you can edit if you were to get it out of here that actually holds the configuration data, the specifics about this VM, like how many cores it has and where the storage is located, all that. So these are the 2 most important files. If you wanted to move this VM somewhere else, you would definitely need the VMDK and the VMX. If we look at our media, what do we have downloaded so far? Looks like 2 out of the 3 are downloaded, and I can't tell here which ones are fully downloaded or not. But we'll not worry about that right now. There's only 1 left. All right, let's create another VM really quick while we're waiting for those to finish up. And you can, like you saw there, right-click on virtual machines to create. That's typically what I'll be doing. And I'll just go through this quickly. VM02. Make this one the Linux one, and we were doing Ubuntu, I believe that was 64-bit. A lot of this will be the same. I'm still going to give it 2 cores. I'm going to give it 100 gigabytes thin. But I am going to leave this one, the VM network, on E1000E for compatibility reasons. I don't know what compatibility this version of Linux is going to have with VMX Net 3. So I'm going to leave it on the E100E. And I think that is it. Finish. All right, let's do one more. Next. Normally I would give these more descriptive names if I was going to use these permanently, but these are just going to be throwaway for test purposes. All right, this is another version of Windows, but this one is Windows 10 64-bit. And again, let's give this one 2048, 2 gigs of RAM, 100 gig hard drive. And actually let's give this guy 50 gigs thick just to show you what the difference is. And lazy 0, means that it's going to fill it out with blank spots, but it's not going to actively write those blank spots. It's just going to leave the data that was in those allocated sectors there. Eager 0, it actually goes in and actively writes a 0 in every one of those sectors. Not necessary, and on SSDs, it's just going to prematurely wear out the SSD. I see no reason for that. All right, this is another Windows machine, so we want a better network card. Perfect. I believe the rest we can leave the same. All right, so let's take a look at that really quick. If we browse 03 and go to the VMDK, this thing is now taking up 50 gigs because we did thick. And thick means even if we've only installed Windows and we still have, let's say, 20 or so gigs free on the OS, VMware's already taken all that space away from our local SSD. It's already allocated all that space to it, much like we do with RAM, so that it can't be used by anybody else. But again, VM02, 0. So we're done copying things. Let's allocate some ISOs to some VMs. Right now, these are kind of just generic placeholders. They don't actually have any OS tied to them. So I have to right click on it and edit the settings. This one I believe was the server. So I will go to my host device and say under media, I want to do my server. VM02. I see that's the Linux box. So let's edit these settings and make this one I have to go to media. Make that Ubuntu. Perfect. Save that. And then 03. Let's make this one the Windows 10 machine. Perfect. And I'm noticing that connected is not selected. That needs to be. I did not do that on the others. So let's check that box there. Let's check that on the others as well. Edit settings. We need to make sure, just like the VM network is connected, we need to make sure that the data store, this is kind of the equivalent of it being that drive being plugged in. You can assign resources, but still not have the drive virtually plugged in, which would. So we can now boot these up and start installing the OSs. Here, you should have a console. Let me try that again. I'm missing the mark here. Okay, launch remote console. And you'll see here this download VMRC. You're going to want that. You can do it in the web, but actually it doesn't give you an option here. But it's not very capable. So you definitely want to get the free console. And let me bring it into view for you here. Oh, it's not letting me. Let's see. Now I can move it. All right, it was warning me about the certificate of this host. So I had to click allow this host before it would let me drag the screen over here. And this is my VM. This is where I'm going to see my VM boot up. And if we bring this and hit play, nope, it's upset. So this is where we were before, basically saying that my, if you remember video 2 on this series, it still complained when I was installing VMware ESXi that my computer could not do virtualization, which I thought was strange. So let's visit that computer and find out why that is the case. All right, I've got that computer here, I believe. But I do not easily have a keyboard and mouse. Let me go grab one really quick. I was not prepared to go into DOS. Okay. So I'm going to hit F12 to reboot. And log into this. Didn't take it. Okay, there we go. Yes, forcibly shut down. There's nothing running. So, and then I want to do a restart, F11. And all we want to do is go back into the BIOS and take a look at this. So as soon as it reboots, I'm going to catch the reboot prompt. I believe on this machine it's F10 to get into BIOS. Quickly, and I made it. Perfect. Okay. So I know that there's some stuff under security. That's what it was talking about right there, VTXT, I think. So let's enable that. We might as well do this one while we're here. This is direct IO VTD. I don't think I use that feature very often, but it can't hurt to enable it. So F10 to accept. Let's try that and see what happens. Save changes and exit. Yes. Perfect. All right. So that's going to boot up VMware. We just need a few minutes for that to fully boot back up. If anybody is watching live while we got a break here and has any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments and I'll answer them if I can. All right, looks like we're almost all the way up. And one other thing I'll show you here. If you go to Microsoft and search for, or just Google and search for Server 2019 evaluation, you will find a free download that you can get. I think you just might have to put in an email address where you can download for 180-day evaluation, which is a pretty decent amount of time. And you can always just do it again after that. Yeah, so they just want a little bit of information from you. And then they will email you a link to download that. And that's pretty fantastic. That's an easy way to get OSs. And it's not just Server 2019. It's pretty much any major Microsoft software. They do this with Exchange. You can do this with other versions of Server. It's pretty SQL, I think you can do this with. So it really lets you test drive these things without having to pay anything. All right, we are now fully booted and we still have that same 115 IP. So that, hit refresh here. Probably need to log in again. So let's try this again and see if it lets us boot this time. That's looking faster. Okay, enter to boot from DVD. And you do have to click inside this black window. So if I hit Control-Alt, it gives me my mouse back. I can now control my local OS. If I click within this black window, my mouse goes away, and I have a mouse inside the window, but not, and you see sometimes it kind of bleeds out. But really, it captures the mouse and keyboard controls when you've clicked inside. And to let go of that, you hit Control-Alt. and then it releases you. All right, so now just leave all this default, and this is like a normal server installation, which the whole point of having a lab is so that you can practice installing software. You can practice using software linked together. So I really see the value of iterating and doing things more and more and more. Installing server 2019 one time is kind of a nice experience, and it's pretty easy to do it. You just hit next a couple of times, but installing it many times under different conditions and installing multiple instances of it, well, trying to link them together and network them together, that's where you're going to start to really break things and learn things. Since we're doing evaluation version, I'm going to go ahead and do the best I can do, 2019 data center evaluation, and next on that. And of course I accept. Custom, hit new here, apply. It gives you a couple more, a bunch more partitions, and then it'll just automatically give you the largest one, and hit next to install in there, and that's going to be off and running. We can now go on to our next VM and leave that in the background. VM02. And right away, you may start to see the benefit of virtualization. If you have not played with virtualization much, you're going to see how quick you can iterate and how quick you can practice and install things simultaneously when you're doing it virtual, because you're not switching between multiple windows, or once you get that physical server working, the physical just kind of fades away and everything becomes just software, and it really lets you do a lot in a short period of time, and it gets even better once you get further along in the process. All right, let's install Ubuntu. All right, looks good to me. I used to be a big CentOS fan. I guess I still am, but I've been favoring Ubuntu lately just because it's so many of the things I want to install on it are well documented for Ubuntu, and a little bit less so for CentOS. All right, normal, sure. Let's not download updates. I don't want to take extra time during this demo. And yep, give it the whole virtual disk. And it's showing us which disk it's using. It's the only disk we have in there. That's fine. So each one of these, again, if you're not super familiar with virtualization, each one of these OSs only has visibility to the disk that we gave it, and it's partitioned off. So it cannot see the other, the Windows one cannot see anything on the Linux one. I don't know why that's hung up. Windows 10 machine. And hit play on that guy. You end up with a lot like VCR controls, where you can play, pause, stop. All right. This happens to be an ISO that has both a 32 and 64 bit, because I was trying to install it on some older hardware, but we'll go with the 64. All right, let's moving along. Minimize this for now. All right, where is this at? Why is this stuck is my question. Not able to do anything in this window. So I'm going to restart this and try again. Meanwhile, here's my Windows 10. We'll install this guy. And I'm noticing I do not have a product key. Windows 10 is easy to get media creation tool now. And you can create the ISO. It does not require any purchases or software until you actually need to activate it, and you can install it without a key. So you can basically evaluate Windows 10 for free as well. right from the Microsoft website. And I always like to go Pro. Pro is the lowest edition that allows you to install onto a domain. And you'll see this one is down to 50 gig thick partition. Looks like a full 50, just like the other ones looked like a full 100. And there's a lot of our partitions. Hit next. That's moving along. All right. I am noticing that data center server 2019 I installed happened to be without a desktop experience. I think I just clicked on the non-desktop experience. So we need to set a password here. All right, and we're just going to get this. This is all you get with Windows 2019. What used to be called the Core Edition. They've changed that language, I believe, now, where this is just Server 2019, and then the desktop experience is when you get the GUI. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I haven't done this in a few months. There's some command to bring up the more graphical interface to do some basic functions like get Windows updates and get set IPs and stuff like that. Let's go back and look at our Ubuntu. What's it doing? Nothing? All right, Ubuntu has failed miserably. Let's shut this down. We'll give it one more try while Windows 10 is installing. Okay, install. Continue. Continue. Normal. Install now. This is where we got stuck last time. Continue. There we go. Let's just go. So for some reason, it just got hung up. Yep, I'm in New York. I do have to put in a password here. I'm going to put in my normal password I put in for labs, capital P, password, the number 1, and an exclamation point. Perfect. And yeah, well, for this purpose, we'll do login automatically. It's not secure, but it's just a lab. It saves me from having to type it a bunch of times. All right, that is thinking. Looks like we're at 93%. Let's find that command really quick. All right. Server 2019 shell command. That's probably not what I want. No, thank you. Okay, let's try that again. 2019 core GUI. Core 2 GUI, that's funny. core commands. Let's start with that. It should have server core. Perfect. Why does this keep trying to get me to log in? I do not want to log in. That's really annoying. Not sure what that's doing, but it's annoying. All right, here we go. How do we get to this is the question. I remember it being something useful. There's a bunch of commands. That's not what I want. None of those. Manage server core. All right, I don't think we're going to find it right now. All right, so Windows 10 is moving along. This is moving along on Ubuntu. And we've successfully installed this. So one cool thing that we can do on our VM here, if we go back to our kind of control panel, if we look at VM1, is we can right click on it and we can take snapshots. So this is one of the cool things about VMs is the ability to snapshot. And if we take a snapshot, we'll just give it a name and I'll uncheck this box because that takes extra time and take a snapshot. It takes about 2 seconds. It's done. And now anything that we do to this VM is happening after that snapshot. And if we right click and go back to view snapshots, manage, I guess, right? So you can see here, this is the VM, this is the snapshot, and this is where we are. So everything that we do is happening after the snapshot. If I want to test a piece of software or run a piece of code or execute a virus just to see how it works kind of in a test VM, I can do that. And then all I do afterwards is click on it and say restore to snapshot. Click that button, hit restore. And now the VM is back at this level. It's gone back in time to here. And you can see the VM turned off because of that. So I hit play. And it boots back up, but it boots back up exactly with the same hard drive status as if it basically lost power at the time of the snapshot. It's kind of like the equivalent of pulling the plug. If you take a snapshot and leave this snapshot, the virtual machine memory, it even remembers what's in memory. That's why it takes longer. It has to dump all that to disk. And it'll boot up. It'll restore already booted. It'll be kind of already in a booted position. It just pushes all that back into memory and then hits play again. So that's amazing technology. It lets you iterate again very quickly, and you don't have to have just one. You can create multiple snapshots. You kind of want to keep track of what you're doing. Right, here's test 02, and I did not uncheck that box, so it's going to take a few extra seconds to do the RAM on this one. But you want to keep track of what you're doing, but you can have multiple snapshots and kind of switch between them as you want to test different things. So that's extremely powerful. And that's one of the best things about virtualization is your ability to take snapshots. And each one is not recorded as a whole extra hard drive, or at least the whole capacity of the hard drive. If we were to look at our hard drive again under storage, let's browse this guy. We're on VM01. What it's doing is it's taking a point in time and it's writing all future changes to that next thing. So here's my my true, hard drive. Of that 100 gigs, it's using 5.71 for a full install of Server 2019. And then my first snapshot is going here. Any changes made after that first snapshot are being written to this disk. Then once I made a new one, any changes from after that one are being written to this disk, and so on and so forth. It is not healthy to maintain too many snapshots, especially in production, and you don't want to maintain snapshots for too long. It can cause performance issues, but it can also just lead to some general instability because it has to track all those changes. So you're just adding unnecessary complications to your VMs. But for a lab environment, it's fantastic. All right, so there's my Ubuntu completed install, and then Windows 10, and this is always fun. Windows 10 asks a bunch of annoying questions every time, and we can go through this pretty quickly. You'll see here, I'm on this desktop, or we talked about it before. This is a pretty small, ultra slim HP 8300 desktop. It's only got 8 gigs of RAM and an SSD and an i5 processor with 4 cores. I currently have 3 VMs booted on this thing, and they're all feeling snappy. I mean, there's nothing slow about these install processes. So this is a very capable lab machine. I'm not giving them a lot of RAM. Fortunately, with an SSD, they don't need a ton of RAM. This is not something that you're going to be using to, do real work on. You're just booting them up in order to prove that you can and to test a couple of major features. Maybe sharing some files between them, maybe eventually putting, Office on them or Outlook in an Exchange server in a VM, and then connecting it to that, connecting it to Active Directory, joining it to the domain, all things that you don't really need a ton of resources to do. And this is just one of these. I recommend running 2 or 3 of these HP desktops in a group. And that's probably the next step in this series that I'm doing here. So I have several of these available to me, some of them with 16 gigs of RAM, and I will probably be linking them together and then breaking out of this limited interface of ESXi and going into vSphere, where we can then see them, all the hosts together, and start making changes as a group, as a batch, rather than independently. So that's all I got for today's video. Any questions, comments, thoughts on this video, anything else you want to see, throw it in the comments below. I'll get to them as I can. And I want to thank you for watching.